Today I have a real treat for you. I talk an awfully lot about health and healing, growth and maturity on this channel, but lest ye get carried away thinking that I have always been the evolved creature you see in front of you, or thinking that therapists and mental health professionals have surely not been toxic themselves. Oh, surely I have. So today I'm telling you three stories about three times in which I was undeniably and inexcusably toxic. This video is for educational and entertainment purposes. These examples are relatively harmless and a little bit funny, and I'll explain why I did what I did. I'll also explain what I've learned since then so we can all emotionally mature together. So, without further ado, here are the three times in which I was definitely toxic. Number one, the time I got my boyfriend fired. I started dating Garrett, my now husband, when I was 18 years old. We've been together for over a decade now, and let me tell you that that man has been on a long and winding road with me. I mean, it's the same for him. Like, we've really grown up together, you know? We've gotten a chance to grow and build together, and I'll talk more about that at a different time. But I am going to tell you about the time that I got that sweet and wonderful man fired from a job because I did something toxic. Let me set the scene for you. 4 months before this incident, I began working for a fairly wealthy woman. I'm going to call her Karen. Karen was a grumpy and terrifying woman. I still have nightmares about her on a fairly regular basis. And I'll tell you what I've come to understand about Karen later, but I just could not do anything right for her, and the way that she would talk to me and treat me really made me angry. It was the best money I had ever made at the time, and this was post Cutco, so I think it was somewhere around $20 to $25 an hour. So I really wanted to make this work, but this woman was extremely controlling and irritable, and I could not stand it. I'm sure with the emotional maturity I have cultivated at this point, it would be a different story, but I was 20 years old at the time and in disbelief that anyone could have such specific opinions on how their lettuce was shaped, for example. So eventually I could not do it anymore, but I said, hold on, Garrett could handle this woman. You are so sweet and caring and you get along with people. Let us trade. You try to do this job and I will do a different job. So that's what we did. I went to Karen. I said I couldn't do the job for such and such a reason. And I said, but my boyfriend would love to take this over. And he did. But it turned out that Garrett was having the same experience I had. There were some class issues kind of happening here. It was my first of many experiences working for people wealthier than me who had unrealistic expectations that kind of did not fully acknowledge my humanity. It's like this attitude of the help. You know, when you're the help, your job is to be a servant, you know? And I also would like to say I've worked for wealthy families that did not treat me that way, who were absolutely lovely. So it's a specific subcategory of wealthy homes that I have been inside of. Now, I grew up in relative poverty in the sense that we relied on welfare, we had food stamps, we only had donated presents at Christmas time, you know, that kind of a thing. It's a whole lot I could dissect and dive into, but for the purposes of this story and to begin to dive into my toxic role, suffice it to say, I had a little bit of unexamined rage toward the wealthy. Just coming into real contact for the first time with different lives that are possible with money, the different ways that these communities were structured, and, you know, the unbelievably different lives these children lived. So I did not have a cell phone at the time. And look, again, I know I am in the wrong in these parts. Going through college, I was determined to not need a cell phone. I had a laptop that I would use for everything and I just did not want to pay the bill. Felt like I could get by without it. Used Facebook to contact everyone. It was just a little quirk. And this role, I don't want to get too much into it, but it did kind of require a lot of communication. So I'm embarrassed to admit the like fight I put up about the cell phones. Karen was somewhat tolerant of my lack of a cell phone, which in retrospect is incredible and just even more of a surprise given how controlling she was about a lot of things. Garrett and I would basically share a cell phone at this time because we were just so broke trying to make it, living like on the outskirts of the city. So when he started working for her, Karen was so excited because he had a cell phone. Shortly after he began working for her, we pooled our money so that I could get a new cell phone. And then, of course, his broke. This poor woman, when he told her that, she lost it a little bit. She gave him a hard time. She was like, "This is unacceptable. You need to get a new cell phone." And after some beating around the bush, she was like, "You need to have a new cell phone by tomorrow." And when my baby came home and told me that, my blood just boiled. It was a culmination of a lot of things, but at the time, I found it so outrageous that she just expected him to drop everything and spend all this money on a brand new phone, or she was threatening to fire him. And I just saw red. When I used to get activated like that, I would just have some sort of out of body experience, and I would have such a strong compulsion to act that there was just no thinking first. So I still have Karen's number and I texted her and I opened it up with, "Listen, you rich." I'm sure you can imagine how the situation devolved from there. I sent her a wall of text about how it was great that she didn't understand that a cell phone was a lot of money, but it was for some people, and how she treated us so disrespectfully, and on and on. My poor, wonderful, sweet husband, boyfriend at the time, was helpless to stop me, but he knew all about what I had done. This poor man was just dreading work the next day. When he went in, Karen brought him into the grand room and shut the doors. I can only imagine how anxious he was in that moment. Honestly, I feel terrible. That's got to have just been so stressful. She tells him that there are clearly some negative feelings about her floating around the household, and told him that she was letting him go. It was the one and only time that Garrett has ever been fired, and it was directly because I was toxic. I would never do this now. I would never do something to interfere with, his life and his job opportunity and his boss. He should have had the agency over whether or not he kept that job, and I regret kind of taking that decision from him by my actions. In retrospect, number one, I can see that this woman had a lot of challenges in her home life, probably a lot of things that didn't go the way she expected. I do have some empathy for the fact that she was just genuinely miserable and probably very anxious, and that might have been why she tried to control things and was generally difficult to be around. If I were in that position again, though thank sweet baby Jesus that I would never be, I think I would be able to keep from taking it as personally. Number two, I think that my anger towards this woman was also fueled by my own people pleasing tendencies and perfectionism. I was just so frustrated that I could not do my job good enough for her when I was just trying so hard to make her happy, and I was really still struggling with externalizing my self-worth, and as a result the way that she was treating me was having such an impact that it was making me angrier than it needed to. And three, as I mentioned, this situation was so fueled by issues of wealth inequality and class. While I do think my actions were out of line here and led to my boyfriend losing his job, I do still feel that coming from her side was a certain perception of domestic workers, and it really rubbed me the wrong way. But this video is not called 3 times that I justified my behavior. Again, I take accountability for the fact that that was toxic. Number two, the time I gave out a classmate's phone number in prank calls. I think it's been long enough that I can admit that the rumors are true. I did give out a classmate's phone number in connection to a series of prank calls. This was like in middle school, and this classmate was very hot and cold with me. We were on the same dance team and just never knew where I stood with her, and that made me not like her very much. Meanwhile, man, did I love a good prank call. The thrill of finding something funny to say on the spot or even planning something out just really used to get to me. A friend and I had developed a few prank call scripts. One of these was like a fake advertising jingle for a condom company. If you wanna have sex with ladies, blank condoms won't make you have babies. Except instead of blank, we filled in my classmate's name and provided her home phone number as a callback number. Now, I am not defending this. It is a hilariously stupid thing to do, but it is ultimately pretty toxic. It is not the right way to deal with ambiguous female friendships. Taking matters into your own hands to try to kind of get back at someone is pretty toxic. Number 3 is the time I stabbed myself with a pencil. This is another Garrett story, and listen, again, I'm not gonna defend myself. I've spoken elsewhere on my channel of my complex PTSD, which can sometimes look just a little bit like borderline. Here's an example that really highlights that. One day, Garrett and I were studying in the library at my university. Garrett was a little stressed out. He was also in school at the time. We were both doing homework. Sometimes when he's stressed or anxious, he will do things that really bother me because I feel like he's hurting himself. There's a lot I could say about the ways that people have hurt themselves in front of me throughout my childhood and how my emotional reaction to that has kind of been used against me or used to kind of get me to do things. So at this earlier time in our relationship, when I would see him do things like that, I had what you could call an outsized reaction. So he was sort of lightly stabbing himself with a pencil. And I was like, stop it. Stop doing that. And he wouldn't stop. And before I knew what was happening, I had taken a pencil and said, "How would you like it if I did that?" Then stabbed a pencil into my hand so hard that all this time later, I've got this little graphite freckle tattoo. It sits here on my hand to remind me of the heights of emotional dysregulation that I can reach. Just keeps me humble. That's all for today's video. I hope that it helped you to feel better about your own toxic behavior. We are all on this journey together. We are all trying to do better than we did yesterday. And while we don't want to continue to replicate those behaviors, I think that there is no shame in identifying something that you used to do that now you can kind of say, oh, that was a little toxic. Let me know what you think down below. Let me know if you have any toxic stories yourself. I certainly have a couple I didn't mention today, so if you liked this kind of video, let me know as well. Subscribe for more stories, mental health, and wellness content, and I'll see you next time.